Hello everyone, welcome back to 3 News Now. It is Tuesday, July 28th. This is your afternoon update with the top headlines from WKYC.com and our WKYC app. I'm Stephanie Haney. Thank you for joining me here for everything that you need to know here in Northeast Ohio. We have a lot to get through. We will start with updates from Governor Mike DeWine's press conference happening this afternoon. Of course, we'll give you the new COVID-19 numbers, and spoiler alert, those numbers are up. We will also talk about former Ohio State Senator Nina Turner and what she has to say about the options on the upcoming presidential ballot with that election just 98 days away. We'll also take a look at what Ohio State football might look like this year, if it happens, an investigation into the Ellen DeGeneres show, and Emmy nominations are out. We'll talk about whether your favorite show might have made the cut. First up, let's talk about Governor Mike DeWine and one of the announcements he just made at his press conference this afternoon on what has become his twice-a-week COVID-19 update for the state. Governor Mike DeWine has said that all childcare providers will now have the option to return to full class sizes. That will take effect on August 9th. Now, childcare facilities were permitted to reopen on May 31st, but they have been at limited capacities and limited teacher-to-student ratios. But they will now have the option to return to full capacity starting August 9th. These facilities will, however, be able to opt to maintain their current limited ratios, and if they do that, they'll be able to receive a subsidy from the state instead to sort of offset the cost, them not getting in as much income because of the reduction in the childcare setting sizes. Now, Ohio has seen a rise in COVID-19 cases and trends since May 31st, but Governor Mike DeWine said today that the state's numbers are beginning to plateau. Let's take a look at those numbers. We've got those in at 2 p.m. from the Ohio Department of Health, and new daily reported cases are up quite a bit. Deaths are among one of our highest numbers, up slightly, and we saw a significant increase in both new reported daily hospitalizations and also people who are currently hospitalized in Ohio. Now remember, when we get these new daily reported cases, this doesn't mean that there were this many new people that tested positive yesterday. There's a little bit of a delay in getting that information because it takes some time to get the test results back. But in the last 24 hours, there have been 1,320 new reported cases of COVID-19 reported to the Ohio Department of Health. That brings our total number of cases that we've known about here in Ohio to now 86,497. Of those, the Ohio Department of Health is now presuming that 61,056 people have recovered. So that's just over 70%. That's 70.6% of those cases we believe have been recovered. According to the Ohio Department of Health, that means that just under 30% are currently active here in the state of Ohio. Now, here's some sort of good news. Our most recent test positivity rate is 5.3%. That's lower than we've seen it for a while, but this test positivity rate, which means of all the tests that have been done, this is the percentage of tests that have come back positive. This is from 2 days ago, July 26th, and that's when we saw only 889 new cases of COVID-19 reported. That's the only day in the last several weeks we've saw that number below 1,000, so it makes sense that that positivity rate would be down for that day. So just keep that in mind, because since then, those new daily reported cases have jumped back up to just over 1,100, and today 1,320. So we're going to be seeing that number go back up in the next couple of days. Now, our 7-day rolling average for that test positivity rate is 6.2%, which is above the World Health Organization's recommended threshold of 5%. And even with that low number from 2 days ago, we are still above that recommended 5% threshold. So just keep that in mind. Now, in the last 24 hours, the Ohio Department of Health has reported 38 new deaths related to COVID-19. That's up from 37 yesterday and up from 10 on Sunday, bringing the total number of deaths related to COVID-19 to now 3,382 here in Ohio. And in the last 24 hours, there have been 140 new hospitalizations reported. Now, this data is a little bit more real time, and that's up a lot from yesterday when we saw 86 new hospitalizations reported. The total number of people who have been hospitalized related to COVID-19 is now at 10,425 in the state of Ohio. And today, there are now 1,144 people who are currently hospitalized related to COVID-19. That's about 11% of all the people who have been hospitalized are currently hospitalized related to COVID-19. The total number of people who are in the ICU today is 363. So that's about 32% of all those people who are hospitalized today are receiving treatment in the ICU. We saw 22 new ICU admissions reported in the last 24 hours, bringing the total number of people who have received ICU treatment in the state of Ohio related to COVID-19 to now 2,488. Now let's take a look at the national and the global numbers. These come from Johns Hopkins University. The U.S. is now reporting 4,309,230 known cases of COVID-19 across the U.S., and the total number of deaths reported across the U.S. is getting very close to 150,000. That number is now 148,298. So that is more than 1,100 new deaths reported in the last 24 hours across the U.S. Now, if you compare the number of deaths to the number of known cases in the U.S., that gives us a death rate of 3.4%. And we are still holding steady at those percentages that we've been seeing over the past several weeks in terms of how we compare the U.S. to the global COVID-19 situation. The U.S. has 26% of the known COVID-19 cases in the world and 23% of the known COVID-19 deaths in the world. Globally, there are now 16,540,137 reported cases related to COVID-19 globally, and the total number of deaths related to COVID-19 globally is now 655,300, giving us a global death rate when you compare the known deaths to the known cases of 4%, and that has been holding relatively steady as well. Another announcement that Governor Mike DeWine made today is that all fairs throughout the state will now be limited to being junior fairs. That order will go into effect on July 31st. So that means that livestock, photography, and youth exhibits will still be allowed at the fairs across the state, but things that will not be allowed include rides, grandstands events, and carnivals. There will also be a 10 p.m. curfew at all of these events across the state. We're also now learning that Ohio State football will be limiting its stadium capacity. This is one of the first things we've heard about stadium capacity as we try and figure out what the NFL may do when we look towards the start of the NFL season. But we do know now that Ohio State University will be limiting its stadium capacity for the fall, and the Ohio State University athletic director is worried that there may not be a 2020 season. OSU athletic director Gene Smith said to reporters on a conference call that he used to be cautiously optimistic, but he's not even there now. But if it does happen, here's what we know about what that will look like at Ohio State. Only 20% of the Horseshoe's capacity will be filled during games in the 2020 season. They will be adjusting ticket quantity and seat location for all season ticket holders in order to make that happen. Another thing that will not happen, there will be no tailgating for Ohio State football games. There will also be no pregame skull session pep rallies before Ohio State games. This was announced in a letter to season ticket holders from the Ohio State Athletic Department. Now, there will also be changes in the stadium if it does move forward with a season for 2020. That'll include physical distancing, mandatory masks and facial coverings, and also limited concessions. Now, if you are a season ticket holder for Ohio State University, you can opt out of this year's tickets, and you won't suffer any penalties for that. You'll still get your consecutive years of season ticket holding and that sort of thing, but you can opt out. But you have these options if you choose to do that. You can receive a refund for your tickets, you can receive a credit towards a future ticket purchase, or this is another option that the school is offering. You can donate the payments you've made for your tickets to support student athlete scholarships, which is definitely something that will be in need this year because we do know that those ticket sales put a lot of money into those organizations, and some of that money does go towards student athlete scholarships. Now, the Big Ten already announced that if it does move forward with the season in the fall, it will be a conference-only schedule for 2020. So we'll be keeping a close eye on what happens there. Also here in Ohio, we have an Ohio State Senator, a former Ohio State Senator, Nina Turner. She is very outspoken. She had choice words on our presidential options as we are 98 days away from the election, which is taking place on November 3rd. She published this statement in an article by The Atlantic. She said, "It's like saying to somebody, you have a bowl of crap," she did not use that word, "in front of you, and all you have to do is eat half of it instead of the whole thing. It's still crap." That's what she said about our possible presidential candidates, President Donald Trump and the presumptive Democratic nominee, former Vice President Joe Biden. Now, Nina Turner is a well-known supporter of former presidential candidate Bernie Sanders. She was co-chair of his presidential campaign. Sanders did eventually endorse Biden just a few days after he suspended his campaign in early April, but apparently Nina Turner has not gotten on that bandwagon. Here is something else we need to know about the state of Ohio. Ohio, as a state, is above the national response rate for the census. That means that more people in Ohio have already responded to the U.S. 2020 census than the national average, but a lot of our cities individually are not doing so great. That includes Cleveland, Toledo, Akron, Cincinnati, and Dayton. They are all below the national average. So in Ohio, we have a current response rate of 66.8%. Well, the national response rate is 62.6%, but in Cleveland, the response rate isn't even half. We are only at 47% of a response rate here in Cleveland. In Cincinnati, they're only at 51.7%. Toledo's response rate is less than half. It's 49.8%. Dayton, 55.9%, and then Akron, doing a little better, 61%. Here's the deal, guys. This is very important because there is an estimated $900 billion in federal funding at stake. That number comes from the GW Institute of Public Policy at George Washington University in Washington, D.C. So what the census does is it figures out where that money is going and how that money will be spent once it gets to a particular state, all based on population. So it's really important that we all fill out the 2020 census. And for the first time ever, everyone can do it online at 2020census.gov if you want more information about it. We have a whole explainer on it that I wrote personally on WKYC.com and our WKYC app. So I highly recommend you check it out. Very important stuff. This is also what's responsible for redrawing our voting districts. Very important stuff. So if you haven't yet filled out the census, make sure you do it. There is a lot at stake. Speaking of things where a lot is at stake, the Ellen DeGeneres show is purportedly under investigation for a toxic workplace culture. Warner Media is reportedly investigating the environment at the show over discrimination and mistreatment allegations from employees. Now, a Warner Media representative told Tegna, which is the parent company of WKY Studios, that they are declining comment when asked for confirmation about the reports. Warner Media is the parent company of the Ellen distributor, Warner Brothers TV Distribution. So reportedly, Warner Media has hired a third-party consultant to interview both current and former Ellen employees. This is after at least one current and 10 former Ellen employees talked to BuzzFeed for an article, and they said that they were fired for taking medical leave, that they were fired for taking bereavement days after attending family funerals. There were also claims of racist comments from coworkers and other forms of discrimination. One former employee who is Black said that she was reprimanded for bringing up her concerns about racism and different forms of discrimination, and then that led for her to quit the show. Now, the former employees did not directly point their finger at Ellen DeGeneres, but they did in the article blame top managers and executive producers and say that Ellen needed to take more responsibility as the star of that show for the culture that was being brought upon the show, according to this single current and 10 other former employees. BuzzFeed said that the executive producers did point out a joint statement saying that they take the allegations very seriously. So we'll be watching how that develops. Now, today was a big day for primetime TV. The 72nd Primetime Emmy Awards nominations were announced today online, a little differently than normal. Here are some of the highlights. That dystopian series Watchmen led Emmy nominations with 26 nominations, the most of any show. Amazon's comedy The Marvelous Mrs. Maisel was the second most nominated series with 20, Emmy nominations. And then that was followed by Netflix's Ozark with 18 Emmy nominations. Just a couple of the individual nominations I'll share with you. Jennifer Aniston and Steve Carell were both nominated for the Best Drama Leads for Apple TV's The Morning Show. Sterling K. Brown was nominated for Best Drama Lead for This Is Us. Best Comedy Lead nominations included Issa Rae for Insecure on HBO and Don Cheadle for Black Monday. We do have that full list up on WKYC.com if you want to check and see if your favorite show made the cut for Emmy nominations this year. I was disappointed not to see a Mrs. America nomination. I was very disappointed to see that. But check and see if your favorite show was nominated on WKYC.com and our WKYC app. We will see who wins on September 20th. When the Emmy Awards are hosted by Jimmy Kimmel. That'll air on ABC. That's it for your 3 News Now afternoon update for Tuesday, July 28th. Thanks for joining me here. I'll see you next at 5 p.m. on What's New with your trending stories for the day. And if you don't have cable, if you don't have a digital antenna to watch it over the air, you can stream that live in the WKYC app, so make sure you download that if you don't have it yet. I'm Stephanie Haney.